Good evening, everyone. Welcome. How wonderful that you made it out on a cold, damp night. We're hoping for a little sprinkle of snow, but whatever, we don't have to double rain, so it's okay with me. I'm so happy that you're here and that you're joining us. This is the Eramosa Ensemble. We have, starting at the far end, Chris Barlow on violin and cello. And then we have Chris Arbuckle on viola, and then Heather Blair on French horn, Liz Guthrie on clarinet, and me, Barb Eley, on flute. And we have been playing for a number of years now. The ensemble has gone through numerous iterations. This is the one that's been the most consistent. We never stopped playing during COVID. If we had to do it on Zoom, we did it on Zoom, thanks to Chris Arbuckle, who would host us on Zoom, and never got to hear anybody playing but herself. Because as we know, Zoom is a little difficult with music. So she would play, we would all mute and play along with her at home. But we were so happy to get back together. And as you see, this is what we wear when we're playing together, trying to keep, things from moving around as little as possible. I did try wearing a mask when I played the flute. It doesn't work. So I have a face shield with a little corner cut out of it. It was the best I could do. Each year, in between numbers, just to give our lips a break, we ask people to share a story. And we generally have a theme. We've had some wonderful stories over the years. This year, I'd like you to start thinking now about, do you have a Christmas tradition that's unusual or unique? We tend to have things that sort of everyone does, but do you have something that only your family does? And we'll be sharing, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 times that we'll just pause for a moment and share. So if you can think of something that's a little bit different that you don't think anybody might else be doing, that would be lovely to share. So we're going to start with, "O Come All Ye Faithful." come and join my choir. Just saying, just saying. That was very well done. We'll go on with another favorite, Deck the Halls, and I'm sorry that we can't do absolutely every song that everyone would love, but I think we've got a good variety. Traditions do you have that are maybe a little bit different, maybe a little bit unusual? Now, our minister, Reverend Heather Leffler, has a mic, and if you just put up your hand, she'll come around and let you speak into it so we can all hear you.
So, as some of you will know, Chris and I live at not far from the conservation area on a beautiful piece of 10 acres of land. So one of our traditions here is to go walk our boundary. Not many people live on a 10-acre cedar bush, but it's good. Well, this year I think we might get wet feet by the looks of things.
Well, in our family, every year we watch 2 Christmas movies. The first one is normally Arthur Christmas, which I have now just been informed that the very first time we went to see it was with our grandmother here. So we always watch that one every year, and every year on Christmas Eve, although I don't know if we'll be able to do it this year, but every year on Christmas Eve, we watch the Nativity Story movie, and it always gets us in the Christmas mood.
I'm going to say that for Christmas, we have 2 traditions because we do the regular Christmas, which my family goes to each of their other families and celebrate. And we have Ukrainian Christmas, which we do, and it brings in Ukrainian food. And that's a highlight for us. And it's after the Christmas, it's in January. And it became a tradition to us to carry that on.
Let's carry on. Our next one is the first Noel. sound better and better as you're getting warmed up. So our next one is God Rest You Merry Gentlemen.
about cookies because you all know about my cookie baby. So for me, a tradition that I started when I got together with my husband is the 4 Sundays in Advent, because we never really have Christmas out of our own house. So on Christmas Eve, we're at my in-laws, and on Christmas Day with my family. So we come home and like, well, we didn't have Christmas at home. So instead now we do something special the 4 Sundays in Advent. So every Sunday, including today, it's a candlelight dinner. We light obviously our one candle in the Advent wreath, and I turn all the other lights off, and I always bake some nice fresh bread, and we just have like, you know, veggies and dip. And
so I think a lot of people here have heard this story before. So a tradition when I was a kid back in Britain was to go carol singing, although by the time I was a young teenager or preteen, really nobody came around carol singing anymore. So I used to go with a friend, my next door neighbor, plus a violin, and we would play the first verse of Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and we'd knock on the doors. Terraced houses were best where the two doors were together, so we could knock on both at the same time. And we would make a ton of money because nobody else was carol singing. And if people came to the door and they kind of looked as if they wanted more, we would skip to the third verse, which is Hail the Heaven-born Prince of Peace. Because verse 2, we would not sing, because it's got that line about offspring from a virgin's womb. And we were not going to sing that. We did it for about 5 years, and we would only do 3 nights leading up to Christmas Eve, and we would plot our routes on a road atlas so we could maximize the number of houses we get there. And we'd make some money in, you know, pennies.
Thanks, Chris. That's a wonderful story every time we hear it. I'm trying to take direction at the back and, but maybe I'll share a story while we're waiting for Lisa. My mom is from a large family, and so at one point there would have been 39 or 40 people for Christmas Eve. And we would all go to church, and we'd arrive about 9 o'clock at night at my grandmother's or my aunt's, and we had a gift exchange where we had to make the gift. And it initially started as $5. So they would be as creative as my brother folding up a $5 bill and flying it at John, to somebody making a popcorn ball when Sarah was about the size of Abby, and the popcorn ball was about this big. And then people would knit sweaters and make all manner of amazing gifts that cost way more than $5. But you would open them one at a time, starting with the youngest person and going to the oldest person. And it's been an amazing tradition.
So we'll go on with O Little Town of Bethlehem. do each year, because there's always more than we can ever possibly do. We just basically sit down and say, okay, everybody pick 2 favorites. And that's really what, I mean, if you're gonna be the musicians, you may as well, please yourself, right? And we knew you'd enjoy them too. So next we have Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Well done. We'll carry on with some more sharing. If anybody has any more stories, we hope you do.
So my grandparents on my father's side, I guess, were the first ones to start the tradition of making sure all the pens in the barn were clean and all bedded with deep, deep straw, basically the day before or the day of Christmas Eve. And then usually around midnight, one of the adults in the family, and sometimes the kids, would go out and just spend a very quiet moment when the animals are all quiet and they're chewing and just relaxing after their day. And I still do that to this day. I will make sure everything's clean and everything's good, and then just make a kind of a midnight visit. So that's my Christmas tradition that goes back a couple of generations.
Thanks, Brian.
Each year, our Christmas family tradition has been to go to church here on Christmas Eve. Not too unique or anything unique about that, but then we go home, and our tradition, our tree is already all decorated, and we put the angel on top of our tree on Christmas Eve.
We've been doing that ever since my children were babies. And we've taken a picture every year of us putting the angel on the tree. So it's kind of neat to look back at all the pictures over the years and see how our kids have grown and see us all together putting the angel on the tree.
As my kids have grown up and moved on and had families of their own, it was getting to be really difficult to sort out who was having dinner on what day. So I just started having Christmas breakfast at my house. And I make a really nice casserole the night before, and then you just put it in the oven with and fresh blueberry muffins and freshly squeezed orange juice, and then everybody's too full for lunch.
So every time it's a couple days before Christmas, Christmas Eve-ish, we always decide like who's coming to whose house for the Christmas dinner. And sometimes they just decide for about an hour. They don't get anywhere though. So then they're like, all right, we'll just go to bed tomorrow. And what do you know? They don't get anywhere again.
Sounds like lots of families there.
As I said earlier, we ask everybody in the ensemble, you know, what their favorite carols are, and Chris Barlow really likes the Coventry Carol, which I know is not as well known here in Canada as it is in Britain, but I put him off for a few years, so this year we're going to do it. Okay, we're just going to take a minute here to let Heather get down to the keyboard, because another multi-talented member of the ensemble. And we're going to let you just relax for a minute and listen while we do Low High Rose Airfield. theme of a more mellow section, and to give this have a time to pull themselves together again, we're going to go on with my favorite Christmas carol, Silent Night. And it's always been just so beautiful that, and the story, of course, behind it is beautiful as well. I won't go all the way into that, but just one of those things that, you know, everything came together to make something very special happen. I was thinking of traditions myself. My mom had, 4 kids, and we were all within 2 or 3 years of each other. So you can imagine what Christmas time was like in our house, a little bit rambunctious. And looking back, I think she's a very smart woman. She really got, tried to make things a little easier for herself. So rather than hanging our stockings on the fireplace, and we did have a fireplace, she had us each take our stocking and lay it on the end of our bed. And the idea was that you would wake up and there was this filled stocking at the foot of your bed, and you didn't get up because you were busy playing with things. Probably bought her at least a solid half hour or maybe more to sleep in. So you got to admire her being a little bit devious that way. Kept us happy, kept her happy too. And the other rule we had was there were to be no presents opened until Grandma and Grandpa came down and had breakfast. That just about killed us. And they didn't just, have a piece of toast and quickly run out. No. There was porridge and there was juice and there was coffee. So I think in the end, we always really enjoyed ourselves, but it made things just a little bit less insane for everyone concerned. I don't know, is there anyone else who wanted to share a family tradition?
Yes, as you know, I came from Argentina, and my Dutch parents, of course, had the Dutch traditions, but in Argentina, we couldn't have those traditions, so we created one with having a tree in the middle of the living room. And of course, it had to be a cut tree because you could not bring a whole one in there. And we had candles, handmade candles. And we always had a bucket of water and a sponge ready because that had to be illuminated just the one time, and that was the Christmas Eve. And we would sing exactly what you were singing there, O Holy Night. And we sang it in several languages. Mainly, actually, we'd start in the German one, because before I grew up, I started school in the 30s in German before the war. When the war came, obviously, I went to Spanish. And English only came when I was about 8 years old, and I went to the local Presbyterian church where I would read from the Bible in a sort of odd way, but I did. What else did we do? We did not have a Christmas dinner like you have here. Ours was either duck or ham, and it was not in the fashion. I only became used to the kind of dinners I now have had now for the last 70 years, and that's been I called it the Canadian Christmas dinner, and it's a most loved and repeated every year. As for stockings, that was hung earlier in the year or earlier in the month because we celebrated Saint Nicholas. And Saint Nicholas knew when you were naughty or when you were nice. And we'd get a bunch of sticks in the stocking or in the sock. If we had been bad, if we had been good, we'd get a few candies. And that's about it. And obviously, there was a lot of singing. My father played the piano, and my mother, of course, was a trained singer, so she would sing all the lovely Christmas songs. That's it for me.
Thanks so much, Elsa. Great to hear your stories.
Growing up, there was a couple traditions that my mom always used to do, and one was, again, with the stockings, that when they were filled, obviously you had to wait for the mom and dad to wake up, but we would always gather on her bed. That it was fine when we were little, but as we got older, there was less and less space. So eventually we got kicked to the floor while mom and dad still got to sit in bed. The other one that we used to do was we always got to open one gift at my grandparents' house on Christmas Eve.
So some of you will know that I used to be the executive director at Hospice Wellington. And so one of the things that we started in our family as a tradition was to go and sing Christmas carols on Christmas Day at the hospice. And that's such a special time to be with people. And the last few years, Kay's joined us as well. So although Harry has put a bit of a hole in that, hoping to go back this year, but that's a very special time to be with folks.
Mine's a little more lighthearted, I think. I'm thinking about mandarin oranges. And always in the bottom of the toe of the Christmas stocking, for all the stockings that we hang, is a mandarin orange. And the children love opening their stockings. But I'll tell you, when they get to the mandarin orange, it's there on the floor. They all end up in my fruit bowl. But they don't know how special mandarin oranges are. I grew up on the prairies and we didn't have a lot. And fresh fruit was something very, very special. And once a year, mandarin oranges came to our house. And that was the prize in the Christmas stocking. And my children.
Still get oranges. They still get oranges, but they don't have the same appreciation. Thanks, Mary.
Well, Marion, that reminded me of my mom's story about school concerts. And she so looked forward to the orange in that bag of candy that was given out. That was so, so special. But I was thinking back, as long as I could remember, we always had steamed carrot pudding with a brown sugar sauce for Christmas. And I remember one year, my sister decided we should clean up the first course dishes before we serve the pudding. And next thing, there's my father sitting at the end of the table, pounding his knife on the table and saying, "Where's the pudding?" And Brock's story made me remember how Peter and I used to go to feed the sheep when my brother was away over Christmas. And it was such magic on Christmas morning when you heard the sheep munching on their corn. Just made the day. I have one more, just quick one, Heather. I remember back when my kids were little, and it was a tradition that we had when we were little, a family of 4, that the first present we could open Christmas Eve was new pajamas. And that was always looked forward to. We knew what it was going to be, but we always looked forward to the new pajamas.
Not really a tradition, but we must be doing something right tonight, because with all of these stories about Christmas Eve, I just thought it was Christmas Eve. And that put me into a panic. Oh my goodness. Only fleeting though.
Most of you know my father.
Yeah.
And so he was Scottish, and so every year around September or October, he would go out and buy all these ingredients for Christmas pudding. And so then we would get home from school and he would usher us into the kitchen and put us to work, and we had to stir this thing for, it felt like hours. Our arms were going to fall off. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I hate Christmas pudding. So I wasn't even looking forward to this Christmas pudding. So anyway, so he would put it all away, package it up, soak it in alcohol. And then my mother would make homemade custard for Christmas. And so and then they would flambe it and bring it to the table. And I would say, I'll have a tiny wee slice of Christmas pudding because I have to. And can I have a lot of custard, please? And thank you. To this day, when I went and picked up my parents in 2015, they were still making Christmas pudding, the same amount, and they would take it to church and people would have bidding wars on these homemade Christmas puddings. So some people like them.
Well, thank you very much to everyone who shared a story. It's really interesting how many things we have in common and how many things there's little tweaks on and how many things are completely different. Let's carry on with Good Christian Friends Rejoice.
Awesome.
miss the mic on this face shield every single time, aren't I? One more. Give it your best, Gusto, for joy to the world. Well done, everyone, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you to everyone who worked so hard to make tonight a success. It's not just the ensemble up front, it's all the people working so hard on the tech, which we really appreciate. Please stay, join us in Day Fellowship Hall for a social time, and maybe support some of our churches.